What's up, everybody? It's your boy Hawk, and welcome back for the first time in a long time to another video. Yeah, I know it's been a minute, but best believe we have still been watching hoops. I just haven't made a video to talk about it. But today I wanted to talk about game 1 and 2 of the NBA Finals. I've really enjoyed the finals so far, despite game 1 being that blowout. Game 2 was a close game, and I still found some pieces of game 1 that I really enjoyed. So I just want to take some time, talk about what I saw from both games, some things I saw different, some things I did and didn't like from both teams. But I gotta talk about the Celtics first. The Celtics are up 2-0 in the NBA Finals, and I would be remiss, as good as everybody's been playing. To me, the most exciting part about this finals so far was the first half from Kristaps Porzingis in game 1. Going into this series, one of the biggest X factor, and the X factor to me, was how well is Kristaps Porzingis going to play. If he looks like himself, if he looks 75, 80%, 90%, like what version of Kristaps are we going to get? Because throughout all of regular season, he was absolutely fantastic, and he was the reason I had Boston winning the championship all the way going into the playoffs. I liked Boston, mainly because of Kristaps Porzingis, obviously right before his injury and stuff. Because everything that he brings to this team, the floor spacing, the defense, the mid-range scoring, we saw on display in the first quarter of that game. From getting multiple defensive stops on Derrick Jones Jr. and PJ Washington in that first quarter, driving past Derek Lively for a dunk, getting a stop, and then scoring in the mid-range again on the next possession, to closing out that quarter with a block that starts a fast break leading into a late transition, like 30-foot three for him. Kristaps blocked one of Kyrie's jump shots in his first half of that game. All in all, Kristaps Porzingis ends the first quarter with 18 points in 13 minutes and having a huge impact on both sides of the floor, and that's what led Boston to go on to that huge lead to start the first quarter of game 1. Didn't have as big of an offensive game in game 2, but still a solid offensive outing and really good defensive stops on the other side of the ball. So game 1 is the Kristaps Porzingis game, and in game 2 ends up being the Jrue Holiday game. We all know the Boston Celtics love to run a 5-man out offense, having either Kristaps Porzingis or Al Horford on the 3-point line to give as many driving lanes as possible for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But sometimes they'll run a guard in that dunker spot, either Jrue Holiday or Derek White, and in game 2, it was Jrue Holiday. He ate off a couple of dump passes from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as they were driving to the basket and drawing double teams. If I'm not mistaken, Jason Tatum assisted Jrue Holiday on 18 of his 26 points, and none of them were tough buckets. He was either knocking down an open three, attacking a closeout, or honestly just laying it up because he caught it in a dunker spot underneath the basket. And on the other end of the ball, we'll talk about a little bit more later, but Jrue Holiday has been absolutely fantastic guarding Kyrie Irving. So immediately in this series, we get to see what makes the Boston Celtics special. Yes, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are phenomenal players, and we'll talk about them for sure in a second. But to me, what makes the Boston Celtics special, and why a lot of people had them as favorites coming out of the East and eventually potentially winning the championship throughout the regular season, is because of the rest of the team they had around those two guys are fantastic players who, in all rights, are not only starters on their own teams, could be like number 1, number 2 options on their own teams. We've seen Kristaps do it. We've seen Jrue Holiday kind of be a running mate to Giannis last year, with Chris Middleton in and out of the lineup to varying degrees of success. So we know Boston has guys outside of the Jays that can pop off for 20 on any given night. Low-key still waiting on the Derek White game. But let's talk about the engines of this team, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I want to talk about Jaylen Brown first. For me, Jaylen Brown has been timely in these games. When he decides to either be aggressive on offense or aggressive on defense, have come in very timely moments in both of these games. When he's decided to drive to the basket and finish with some really impressive dunks so far these 2 games, they felt timely. When either Boston needed a run or Boston needed a bucket, he was able to put his head down, go to the basket to stop a couple of Dallas runs. And it still blows my mind to this day, Jaylen Brown stripped Luka twice in the open court in game 1 and then got another steal in game 3. He's up to at least 3 steals just on Luka Doncic in 2 games. Not many people in the league can strip Luka twice in the open court in a single game, which in all 3 of those cases led to a bucket on the other end for the Boston Celtics. An example of what I mean when I say his drives have been timely. In the third quarter of game 1, the Dallas Mavericks were starting to make a comeback. They were starting to, string some plays together. Jaylen Brown gets the ball, drives strong to the basket, gets Derek Lively in his 5th foul. Derek Lively had been struggling with foul trouble all throughout that game, gets him in his 5th foul, he has to go to the bench. Boston continues to go on a run to basically negate the run that the Dallas Mavericks were trying to put together there, off of Jaylen Brown getting a drive on Derek Lively and getting the foul and knocking down the free throws. The very next play after Derek Lively getting into foul trouble, the Celtics attack the basket. Now that Derek Lively is no longer on the floor, leaves the Mavs to end up double teaming. They swing the ball. Tatum gets an open 3. Now it's back to a 16-point lead. Also in that third quarter, when Dallas was trying to make a run and the Celtics put a stop to it, Jaylen Brown got the block on Derek Lively and he was trying to drive to the basket. And then a couple of plays later, he blocked Kyrie Irving. Like, when I say timely, his impact on both sides of the ball have come exactly when the Boston Celtics have needed it. All right, let's shift gears and talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum in game 1, 6 for 16 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, 16 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, 6 turnovers. Jason Tatum in game 2, 6 for 22 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3, 18 points, 3 turnovers, 12 assists, 9 rebounds, 5 or 6 from the free throw line. I think 2 things can be true here. 1, Jason Tatum is not scoring the ball effectively in this series so far. He's missing a lot of shots that he normally makes. He's missed a lot of what I think are makeable layups for him at the rim. He's missing pull-up jumpers, I think, like he normally makes. So overall, not an efficient scoring outing for him in these first 2 games. But the other thing that can be true is Jason Tatum is still playing really, really good basketball. One thing that I've noticed about Jason Tatum more and more throughout these playoffs, and it's been talked about by a lot of people, is his effort on the glass and his effort to rebound more. We saw that in game 1 with the 11 boards and some solid defense from him in game 1. But to me, I think his example of having still a really good game while shooting poorly was in game 2. The deliberate effort to drive to the basket over and over and over from him. And like I said, he missed some gimme layups, some layups that I think normally should go in for him, that he normally should make. But he was still putting that pressure on the Dallas's defense. And on the flip side, those 12 assists, I rewatched both Luka's assist and Tatum's assist because I thought it was interesting that both of them had big assist numbers in game 2, especially for Luka considering he only had that 1 assist. Once again, we'll talk about Dallas in a little bit. I didn't realize we still haven't talked about Dallas yet. Might be a long video. But just comparing Tatum's assists to Luka's assists, and go back and watch the game 2 assists just from Tatum and Luka. The types of assists that Tatum was getting looked very similar to the typical assists that Luka gets. A lot of driving to the basket, drawing to, and kicking. Thankfully, in Tatum's case, the Celtics knocked down just a handful of more shots because both teams shot poorly from 3. But the Celtics knocked down a handful of more shots, and the Celtics attacked the basket a little bit better off of closeouts. But I was very impressed by Tatum's level of passing in game 2 and the assist he was able to find his teammates with. I'm not jumping to conclusions on finals MVP and getting into those weeds of that conversation yet. And people are already seeing some lists of looking at field goal percentage versus other stars and finals appearances and stuff like that. We still have at the bare minimum 2 more games to play. So I can't just look at his averages and call it a bust or a terrible series, considering at the very minimum we have 2 more games, and that's if Boston even sweeps. So we'll see, how the rest of the series goes for him. But like I said, 2 things can be true. Really, really bad shooting performance, but still playing really, really good basketball.
It's not the exact same, but what Tatum's doing, and at least in game 2, having a bad shooting night, but still feeling like he played a really good game, reminded me a lot of watching Kobe game 7 against Boston in 2010. Don't kill me. I know, comparing Tatum to Kobe, whatever. But Kobe that game shot 6 for 24. The Lakers still won, and Kobe had 15 boards. And I remember when I was younger watching that game being like, yeah,
Kobe shot horrible, but he had a really good impactful game because a lot of them boards were some timely boards. I'm just saying, you can have a good game, you can have a good impact on the game, even if you're having a bad shooting night. And real quickly, just to talk about some other Celtics, Sam Hauser had some solid moments. For some reason, I like him. He was locked in early in game 1, hit a really tough fall-away 3 in the corner, and then came home for that quick release 3. Also in the opposite corner from a Drew Holiday pass where he didn't bring the ball down, knocked it down. Been some okay defense from Sam Hauser. The Celtics, for the most part, and I guess we didn't talk about some of the schemes that they've been running and stuff and how they've been deciding to not double Luka. Everybody's staying home on their shooters, taking away the lob, taking away that corner pass. And for the most part, yeah, if whoever's guarding Luka, they're trusting like Jaylen Brown. Sometimes it's been Drew Holiday, but a lot of it's been Jaylen Brown. Every now and then we look up and it's been like either Sam Hauser or Peyton Pritchard, either switched on to Luka or Kyrie. And sometimes in those moments, you'll see Sam or Peyton deliberately push Luka or Kyrie towards the help. So Sam Hauser's been solid in some defensive moments. I'm not saying he has not been some moments where he's gotten cooked, but he's been solid. Derek White's had some solid games. He was 4 for 10 for 3 in game 2, and he was 3 for 8 from 3 in game 1. Like I said earlier, we haven't really had a Derek White game yet, and there's potential for it. Al Horford's been solid. I think when he's on the court, he's definitely been the one that Luka and Kyrie have been looking to attack the most, especially in the pick and roll, try to get him on switches. But for the most part, he's been solid. And to me, at least, they haven't gotten anything off that you're not willing to live with if you're Boston. Al Horford's not as athletic and as young as he used to be and agile as he used to be, but he's like has a really, really smart defensive mind, and he knows solid footwork and typically makes the right decision when getting switched out on the guards. But for the most part, the Celtics have been playing phenomenal basketball, like phenomenal basketball. Let's talk about Dallas real quick, though. All right, shifting gears, talking about Dallas. Let's start off with Luka Doncic. Game 2, he's fantastic. Game 1, he was still good. And when you look up at the end of Game 1, while he was struggling a little bit with his scoring, still ended up with 30 points, 12 for 26. A lot of shots, but that's Luka sometimes. 4 for 12 from 3. Only ended up Game 1 with 1 assist, 10 boards. We talked about how how Boston was guarding Luka Doncic. Everybody staying home, did not give up any assists. One of the big adjustments that I think that they made in Game 2, we'll talk about, was guys just cut more. And we'll talk about shooting. People were still throwing up air balls in Game 2. Derrick Jones Jr., I'm looking at you. But also Derrick Jones Jr. cut to the basket more. He finally, you got your first lob in, I think, the third quarter of the second game. Second or third quarter of the second game. To me, in Game 2 is where Luka looked more like Luka. Not only just the passing, but how aggressive he was looking to score. He had 23 of his 32 in the first half of that game. He was fantastic in that first quarter. It felt like he couldn't miss. Like, it felt like, oh, we're going to get a Luka game. Luka's in his bag. You really can't stop him this game. But with all that being said, Boston's still playing some solid defense because Luka ends that game with 8 turnovers. We talked about Jaylen Brown stripping him into open court earlier. Luka still looks good, but there are a couple of moments where you can tell Boston's defense is frustrating him, and he's forcing and causing turnovers that he doesn't normally. Luka Doncic's defense hasn't been amazing, but I think we knew that going into this. We knew that he, just like Al Horford has been for the person that the Dallas Mavericks are targeting, he's the person that the Boston Celtics are targeting. The difference is when tiring him out on the defensive end can make it harder for him on the offensive end. The one thing I'll say I am happy about, because yes, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are driving by him at will, but the one thing I am happy about, he's not committing stupid fouls. Like, Luka, we know you really can't guard these guys. I'm just happy he's not committing stupid fouls, because I know some other stars on other teams that Dallas just played, hint, hint, that would commit fouls when they're guarding someone that they can't guard. Love you, Karl-Anthony Towns. I really do. You just frustrate me sometimes. Honestly, after seeing what Luka did in Game 2, I don't really know what much more you want from him. He was making tough shots. He was finding cutters. Got rebounds, had an efficient 30. The only thing I can see more for Dallas, and we'll talk about some of the things that I think Dallas does need to do, but the only thing I can see more from Dallas, specifically from Luka, is give us 42 instead of 32. Like, that's the only place you can go from here. Luka overall had a really solid 2 games for sure, but that Game 2 was fantastic from him, outside of the 8 turnovers. Moving on to Kyrie Irving, I think he's struggling a little bit in this series. To me, at least, he's struggling a little bit. Boston is defending Kyrie differently than they're defending Luka Doncic. Kyrie has Drew Holiday on him as the primary defender, and whereas I said with Luka, a lot of the guys are staying home, not giving up that pass. With Kyrie, I wouldn't say they're necessarily rushing to double, but they're showing stronger help than they are when Luka has the ball. They're showing Kyrie, no, we actually are here. We will slide over and hedge with you a little bit. Surprisingly, Kristaps Porzingis has been matched up on Kyrie a couple of times in these first 2 games, just off of switches and pick and roll. And there's been once or twice when Kyrie got a good bucket off it, especially against Al Horford. I can specifically think of one in Game 2. But against Kristaps Porzingis, it's been solid. Like I mentioned earlier, KP got that block on Kyrie. He's had some good just contests on him on mid-range pull-ups, some leaning fades. Kyrie has to be more aggressive. He still has yet to make a 3 in this series. He's 0 for 8 from 3. I will say though, in the second halves of both games, especially in Game 1, Kyrie looked more aggressive and attacking the basket. I need more of that. I mentioned earlier, it was the moment he had in the second half in both games where he had a moment where he attacked Al Horford and got to the basket. We need more of that from Kyrie if he's going to be struggling this much to score, because one thing about Luka's game, he can get to the basket. He is efficient at driving to the basket. He just doesn't do it that often, at least in my opinion, at least not against the personnel that Boston has, because Jaylen Brown has the strength to kind of wall up there. And if he does go all the way to the basket, you got like Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis on the court helping there. Kyrie has the ability to get to the basket with some speed behind him. So hopefully, one, just put more rim pressure on the defense and for kickouts and eventually some open threes and maybe somebody knocks something down. But two, Kyrie, if your shot's not falling, you just got to attack the basket and try to get fouled. Randomly speaking of fouls, I think I've been actually surprised of how much the Mavericks have gotten to the line. I would have guessed that the Boston Celtics would have got to the line a little bit more than the Dallas Mavericks. The problem is, especially in game 2, Mavericks are leaving so many free points on the board. Celtics were 19 for 20 from the free throw line in game 2. Dallas was 16 for 24. Mind you, they lost the game by 7. Like, this game was there. They just got to clean it up a little bit. But continuing with Kyrie, I think he just needs to continue to be aggressive. Maybe try to get downhill early, sooner, and then fall back to your jump shot a little bit once they're scared of the drive. But Dallas needs Kyrie to do Kyrie things. That's what I just find it ironic. About a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, when they were playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, the conversation was Kyrie and Luka are the best offensive backcourt of all time. And whether or not wherever you fall on that statement, that's not where I'm here to talk about. I just find it ironic. The very next series we see with different defensive personnel and different schemes, Kyrie's struggling so far. I'm not saying he can't bounce back, but so far Kyrie's struggling. Continuing on talking about some other Mavs, Derek Lively had an excellent postseason run for the Dallas Mavericks. So good for them in the postseason. He looks like a rookie this series. He looked like a rookie a little bit this series. We talked about in game 2, we talked about game 1, him getting into foul trouble. Couldn't really stay on the court long. The Boston Celtics basically just take away those lobs from him. He's gotten a couple of cuts off, but they're still even making like pick and roll cuts difficult. When he's gotten those cuts going, he looks good. But there are moments where it's like his impact hasn't been as big as it's been in other series. I'll say that. I like the adjustment that PJ Washington made in game 2. He looked more aggressive to score. He had a couple of mismatches against Derek White and sought to either just force him underneath the basket to try to go up on Derek White, like a pin down, or just driving through him or trying to post him up. There were also some moments when PJ Washington, got the rebound himself and pushed the pace and tried to see if they could get something going and, give Luka a possession off. To somewhat success. PJ Washington's still not shooting the best either. He's 1 for 8 himself. But I liked some of the things that they've tried to do with utilizing that mismatch of Derek White on PJ Washington. Derek Jones Jr. has also been a little frustrating to me. I think the silver lining for Dallas and for him being on the court sometimes when I'm scratching my head is the defense he's bringing has been solid, especially on Jason Tatum. But if that starts to change and we look up Jason Tatum starts playing well, I would hope that Dallas and Jason Kidd just try different things in game 3 and game 4 at home. That's my hope, and I'll get to that in a second. But Derek Jones Jr. in the first 2 games, he's 1 for 5 from 3. Josh Green was 1 for 4 from 3. We talked about Kyrie and PJ's numbers already. I get there's a reason why they're not on the court, but I would like to see a potential where we see a little bit more from Dante Exum and potentially Tim Hardaway Jr. in games 3 and 4. Fun fact, and I noticed it when it happened, the first 3-pointer in game 2 that Luka assisted on was the Dante Exum. Like I said, not a crazy great sample size. We know the Dallas Mavericks had just been shooting poorly anyways as a whole. And Dante Exum had that moment in the beginning of the season when he joined Dallas when he was solid. And he has been up and down in the playoffs, more down than up. But at this point, I'm like, you're down 0-2, you're going home. And the reason I say potentially, look to get some more guys on your bench, some more minutes just to try something different. If this game 3 starts and we're like halfway through the second quarter and PJ's like 0 for 3 from 3, Derek Jones Jr.'s 0 for 1, Kyrie's still starting out slow, Josh Green hasn't hit it. Like, if we get to the point where we're still getting these above the break threes and they're not dropping because Boston refused to give up the corners, so all the threes that Luka is able to create for his teammates are going to be at the top of the key. Let's just see what Tim Hardaway Jr. can do. Let's see what Dante Exum can do. Well, let's just see it. If it don't work, it don't work, but we're getting into desperate territory. But on the flip side, and the silver lining of that is role players play better at home. Derek Jones Jr., PJ Washington, Josh Green, they are role players. And my hope is they're able to knock down some shots at home. We'll see if they can do that though. Overall, I really am enjoying the series. I'm even enjoyed game 1, as crazy as a blowout it was in the first quarter. And then it just basically ended up being that 80-79 through the rest of the game, through the second to the the second quarter to the rest of the game. I'm enjoying seeing the schemes that Boston's trying to run, watching Luka try to dissect this defense, and watching the Boston Celtics defense do everything it can in its power to make it as difficult for someone as good as Luka has been, to me, exciting to watch. If you made it this far, you really are a real one. And down in the comments below, let me know what your favorite part of game 1 and game 2 has been, and maybe an adjustment that you hope Dallas makes going into game 3 and 4. If you enjoyed the video, a like is appreciated. I would say subscribe if you're new, but if you go look at my video history, who knows when the next video will be. I just enjoyed making this one, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. I'll catch you next one. I'm out. Whenever that is. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.